She is the union president of the I.A.T.S.E. Local Chapter 154, as well as the chair of the Southern Oregon Central. God damn it.
You have it. You
almost
have
a Shakespeare. She is the union president of the I.A.T.S.E. Local Chapter 154. She's also the chair of the Southern Oregon Central Labor Chapter, which is quite the tongue twister to say. Please welcome my dear friend, Amanda Stager.
Hi. Hi.
How are you today?
I'm good. It is a brisk 100 degrees in Oregon today, and that's fine. Everything's fine. We're fine.
The reason why I really wanted to talk to you, especially this week, is because there is a lot of news coming out of Oregon, and having someone like you who's on the ground, I'm in a position to listen and learn and share whatever it is that I can put out there to make sure that everyone knows what is going on, because there's a lot, and I brought you on to discuss that. I do want to hear, what is it like to be in Oregon right now for you?
Oregon, much like Louisiana, where we're both spent our years together when we, growing up, it is very separated in its like demographics and voting regions. So what's happening in Portland is definitely amplified, but what happens in East Oregon is a little different. What happens in Southern Oregon, which is where I am, is different from either of those two regions. And then there's Central Oregon, who we don't really know what they're doing. The focus on the feds and the Black Lives Matter movement happening in Portland is like a Hollywoodized and also very real capture of what's happening in the rest of our state. So for Southern Oregon, we don't have the feds here. We don't have the rage and the riots and the nonstop protests like it is happening in the northern part of the state. There's a town called Grants Pass, which is about 45 minutes north of me, and it's rumored that it's also one of the headquarters for the KKK. So we got that going for us. And when you drop a Black Lives Matter protest and rally in the middle of that, it is electrified and amplified in such a very different way than the protest I was a part of in Portland. Yes, we're still fighting for the same things. Yes, we're allies for the same rights, but it is very different for our BIPOC folk. Portland is a different beast. It's more of a city. It is probably known for being like the liberal bubble that makes Oregon blue. So there's some privilege in that. Whereas the southern parts of the state, and maybe even some of the eastern parts of the state, you have to kind of tread it as you would if you were in Mississippi or parts of Louisiana.
Yeah, that's really fascinating you brought that up, because us being from Louisiana, of course, we think, we grew up in the hotbed of racism. I mean, I remember my father taking me to see a cross is burning. We have gotten so used to thinking that we own racism almost, that when I did research into Oregon, especially found a helpful article from Ari Shapiro at NPR, whose point was that Portland is one of the whitest big cities in America. But all I think about when I think about Portland, I think about Portlandia and hippies and that kind of image. And to find out that it used to be, if not still is, a hotbed of KKK activity where elected leaders are known members of the KKK, just like in Louisiana, just like you were just saying. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of fascinating that this region began as a place where Blacks were not allowed to live in the state constitution. I'm just blown away by how much I've learned about this state in the past 2 weeks.
It is a white flight state. However, what's interesting is it kind of coming out more and more right now is moving away from being like Portland's so damn white because it takes away from our BIPOC folk. It's not as diverse, but there are still BIPOC folk like holding that shit down. And like the Portland moms, if you heard about that, and the push against like Black mothers have been holding the space forever. And now here comes Karen coming in, like woke Karen. So I guess we could call her like Beverly, finding your place to land as an ally in all of it is an everlasting, continuous conversation. It's not just about the Fed protest. It's not just about Black Lives Matter. It's about when you show up and why do you show up and how do you show up. That's constantly the thing, the ticker that needs to be going through our heads of like, is this to get attention? Is this to like make me feel good about like how like I'm showing how woke I am? Like it is that constant checking in with yourself and aligning in that. So for me, going to the Portland protest was a bit of a struggle in trying to figure out why am I driving 4.5 hours north to go to Portland to be a part of this.
My dad lived in Pendleton for
really?
I guess 3 or 4 years. Yeah. And I never got a chance to go out there and see him. But while he was there, one thing that he said to me that I hadn't thought about until very recently, he said that as a Black person in Pendleton, he felt like anyone else. Like he didn't feel the racism he did in the South because he said it was all directed toward the Native population there.
That's really true. That is something that was never on my mind until I moved here, and how much the hate towards Native American population is really, really real. I'm not surprised in that part of the state that your dad wasn't the right shade of brown to receive that hate. No,
I definitely do want to hear more about your time in Portland.
So in the conversation of that scrolling ticker of like, why am I going? How am I going to show up? Where am I going to show up? Who is this serving? Is a lot of feelings, especially for someone like me who is an activist at heart and like wants to show up and like take that heat and be able to like protect my friends and my colleagues and people I don't even know who don't deserve to be disproportionately murdered. You know, it's like I can hold that space. Like I have these privileges. I am like a white woman who looks fairly straight, and you know, I have a really great manager voice. So like let me use my privileges. But going into a city that's not yours and standing with a group of people that aren't your community is, you know, a lot of the kind of conversations I was having with myself. And I was like, well, actually, this is my space and this is my community. This is my home for 6 years. And there's no other time in which I might get an opportunity to exercise my rights and stand with, you know, my comrades. And this way, I think the decision that Trump had to put feds in our city in the first place was a grotesque abuse of power. There's probably far more words to use than that. So to stand with my sisters and brothers and my kin in that city and say, like, we're not going to take it, we're here for it, it felt right to do it. There's also a large Black Lives Matter movement inside of that. And I think that that's where it gets confusing in the headlines, because the protests were partially against the feds, but also like rallies for Black Lives Matter and supporting Black Lives Matter. Now, there were some factions of people who were behaving in a way that were inciting violence. And then there were other factions of people who were like, we know how to behave. We're taking the lead from our POC leaders. I, Amanda Sager, might want to be like, let me organize around this issue real quick. I'm really angry. I am so pissed that this Black man was murdered. I'm gonna go out in the streets and yell about it. That's not what I need to do. I need to go support my POC leaders who have the voices for that. Like, I don't need to appropriate some movement, right? That is kind of where the clash, for me, what I saw when I was out in Portland, the clash of these two movements coming together, wanting to be heard and wanting to be seen. And there were folks who were fighting back in a way that did pull away from the reason for being there. And then suddenly you get tear gassed. And then to me, I was like, well, we all are here getting gassed right now in real time. So we have to reach across our movement aisles and get each other out of the way of these tear gas bombs that are flying at us.
I think we saw a little of that here in New York. Some of the protests that I went to in Brooklyn, where the majority of people you can honestly say, peaceful, out there with well-intentioned, and then people who were thinking they were being allies would step out of line, and we as especially as people of color, we had to be the ones to kind of pull people back and go, come back over here, get your little ass back over here. They're going to hit me, not you. Bring it back down.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you. Like, yes. That it all goes back to, like, for me to stand up and yell about something actually is going to put a person of color in probably far more danger. So, like, knowing when to use your voice or when to shoot off that firework into the crowd of feds, like, and who you are doing that and why you're doing that is something that I think we constantly as allies have to keep checking our shit and understanding where and how we are helping or hampering the process. So when I got into Portland on Saturday, the 25th of July, we met up with our group of people. We had, social distance family meal, because it was like, we have no idea what's about to happen or how long we're going to be out there. So let's just have some solidarity family time. Mm-hmm. And then we took off to where some of the meetup points were that were organized by other groups and movements, and my friends were aware of that. And then on my side, because I'm a union leader, I knew some of the other unions were being called to action that day or that evening for the protest. So I coordinated with some of them on their information. And then that was also the night that veterans were going to hold the front line for the protesters. So we kind of had like our little information pods on where we were going and who was where and how to get there and the best this. So we started off and walking across one of the bridges, because if you don't know, you don't park your car anywhere near a protest. Like, just don't. And so we parked a little far away, walked across one of the bridges, showed up downtown, and as I kind of been explaining it, and this will only make sense to people who have been in Louisiana for Mardi Gras, is that it was like it was sort of like an apocalyptic Mardi Gras. Like, we were all like covered in like head to toe, like in black, like, but like had our snacks, had our water, and then like I was kind of in front of the Justice Center, which is where the feds are like holding up, and then suddenly like a drum line came by, and I was like, Where am I? This is Indian. What's happening?
I love that. I love that spirit of art that still comes through.
Yeah.
The
and
pain.
So they came through and they were like parading through the streets, and they held up shop kind of right in front of the Justice Center where my group was standing, and they like hung out there, played for a while, and then they moved on to like a different like part of where the rally was. And then the next thing I hear was like, no justice, no peace, burritos. No justice, no peace, burritos. Vegan burritos. No justice, burritos. And I was like, we're in Portland. Like, some point later, we had like moved around again. And there was like a convertible Volkswagen Bug with these two like awesome like femmes inside of it who were just like, get your goggles, we have water, earplugs, snack. All this is happening around a really intense moment that's coming. Like, you don't know when the feds are going to walk out. Like, you can guesstimate around 11 or midnight, but everyone is like community and solidarity in that moment, at least what I experienced, and someone else could have a different story. And it was calm. There was tension because we were of the anticipation, but it was calm. Oh, and some like genius person who I would love to know also created projections that they had put on to the Justice Center building that was like they fed goons out of PDX, and then like one other side was like a stormtrooper face, and then like on the facade of the buildings was like Black Lives Matters and different names of the like 125 people who have been murdered that we know of. And then someone like put bubble machines on top of like the cross signals. So like there were moments where you did not really think that you were going to engage in like a straight up attack from your government. Like there were moments where you're just like, oh, I could probably take off some of my like tactile armor that I have on because this is fine. Like a woman just asked me if I wanted a vegan burrito. Like we're fine. And then suddenly you hear this like noise that you're not really sure what it is. And then as it gets louder, you're like, is that the Imperial March from Star Wars? This is like simultaneously hilarious, genius, and terrifying. So at that moment, one of our folks in the group was like, the feds are out, and you can like see them like start to like kind of line the fence or like take their position, and there's just like this bright ass light that kind of flies forward and at you, and here's another one, like, God, we gotta go, we gotta get out of the way, you know, are you okay, let's move. And then like just grabbing your friends being like, we're getting out of here, or like putting people behind you, because I had an umbrella because we learned from Hong Kong. But the tear gas got really it was starting to get really, really intense. And to the point where we were like, we have to kind of like actually retreat all like out of this area around the block behind some buildings just to put something between the tear gas and our bodies. And as we're like kind of grabbing our people or like our group, making sure we all have everyone. Because again, you can't see what the other person really, like who you're grabbing, because we're all covered in black. We're all wearing bicycle helmets and goggles and face masks. And, you know, everyone looks the same. You're just hoping you're grabbing your friend. As we're getting ready to like leave that area, you just hear brrrr, and it's the leaf blower team that's coming in to like take over this area and like leaf blow all the tear gas back all the way to give the protesters to give us a chance to like get our shit together and get out.
Oh, this storytelling, this is epic.
It's kind of the first time we've really talked about it, so it's a little disjointed. I apologize.
No, it's good. It's just as you're saying it, you know, and me being a writer and trying to think about, I'm always thinking about theater all the time. Yeah. So I'm just picturing just how idyllic and beautiful this festival is, and then just turns like that on stage to this violence. But then you're still finding these moments of, and then the leaf blowers came in.
Yeah. This one, I was like, in that moment where we were like backed into a corner and we were just getting pelted with tear gas. They hadn't started using rubber bullets yet. And so when we got into that position, my fight or flight was just like, oh shit. And then not being able to fully take like a breath of air, not only because you're wearing like 2 layers of masks, but you have gas coming in at you. Yeah. And then you have goggles on. So like you're already kind of a little impaired with your peripherals. And your eyes are watering. Like you're just kind of like, you're like, I don't know what to do. Everything that's telling me to leave, I need to leave, but I also like don't know how to get out of here yet. So then to like look up and see like this brigade of folk with leaf blowers was like, oh, thank God. Like we have like a layer of defense. And so then the leaf blowers happen. And then the next thing you see is kind of like the folks with shields that like come back in to like allow the leaf blowers to retreat. And it was like you would imagine like an army war tactic, because there was moments where it really was genuinely like we're being attacked by our government. Like straight up, like I'm standing on a street corner and a peaceful protest to my account. And the next thing I know is that we're getting told by, you know, the Portland police or the feds of like, this has been declared a riot, you have to leave now.
If I was at a protest next to someone who was acting an ass, I'll be the first one to be like, you need to go. Like, you're not representing what we're out here to do. So yeah, I feel like there are moments when people can get a little too passionate or foolish or silly, but the fact that we're not trying to shield those people from the due justice. If they're fucking up, I think most protesters who are passionate about this country and these rights will happily, go away, get out of this situation. I don't think we would try to turn them into the police because they are the problem, but
right. We take care of our own, honestly.
Yeah. You were in such a unique position to see it from both sides, to be a union leader and to be out at the protests in Portland, but then also to go home and have this past that has connected you with the police in a personal way and probably endearing growing up. So I would just like to kind of listen and then hear, like, what has this experience been like for you?
It's one that I am still definitely unpacking. Like, there's a lot of layers to this little shallot onion that we're trying to figure out.